Hi everyone, this is your mini lecture for Chapter 8 on communication. Here are the learning objectives for this chapter. You may pause here and read them if you would like. Alright, first we're going to start out by talking about what interpersonal communication is and what the process of interpersonal communication is. So communication is really just how we create and evoke a shared meaning with another person. And communication comes in a lot of different formats, which we'll talk about. So, interpersonal communication is the communication between two or more people. And in the context of business, it's between two or more people in an organization. And good interpersonal communication can help to prevent stress, and it can also just help things to get done better and more efficiently and effectively. So this is the process or the basic interpersonal communication model. And so you have a communicator and you have a receiver. We each perceive things in our own way. All right, so the communicator sends a message with verbal and nonverbal cues, and then the receiver perceives it. And then through, again, other nonverbal and verbal feedback loops, maybe maybe the communicator tells the receiver something and the receiver looks puzzled and they say, I'm not sure I understand. Can you clarify that? And then the communicator reforms their message and tells it to the receiver, and the receiver says, okay, I get it. And then eventually there is some sort of outcome at the end. One of the key components of interpersonal communication is listening. I recently was talking to some employers, large employers within the state, and one of the key things that came out is that employers are looking for people with good communication skills and specifically people who are able to listen. And so in our book, we talk about reflective listening, which is carefully listening to a message and then repeating it back. It helps the communicator to clarify, to make sure that they understood the message. I have also found that repeating things back helps me as the receiver to better remember it too. All right, so there's different ways of reflective listening. So there's affirming contact, so providing reassurance to the speaker in expressing thoughts and feelings. All right, paraphrasing. All right, so saying, okay, somebody tells you something, and then saying, okay, let me rephrase that. Is this what you're saying? Or paraphrasing, clarifying, right? So enabling the identification of unspoken thoughts and feelings. So providing clarification, reflecting our feelings on what was said. Some nonverbal responses to reflective listening include silence. I know in general we try to fill silence. We don't like that void, but it's good and it's okay to have silence to help us to absorb what was said, to help us to think before we respond, right? And then eye contact, making sure that you're looking at each other when you're talking. I know I do this specifically in my own relationships. I'll be like, hey, can you put down your phone and look at me while we're talking? Because then I know that they're really listening. And then there is, this idea of one-way versus two-way communication. So one-way communication is when we send a message to another person, we don't ask for feedback, we don't have questions, there's no interaction. In fact, what I am doing right now, making this video, is one-way communication. I will, we can make it into two-way communication then if I would, when I say, please contact me with questions, or I post this and you're able to respond. Um, so one-way communication is you're just sending a message. Two-way communication is both or multiple parties are interacting on the subject. All right, so there's 5 communication skills of effective supervisors. These are expressiveness, empathy. Empathy is trying to understand the perspectives or feelings of other people. This is another highly sought after skill that employers are looking for. Being sensitive, being able to persuade is one of the communication skills. And then being able to have an informative management style. Right? There are communication barriers and ways to get around them as well. So some factors that are communication barriers or barriers to communication are factors that distort, maybe change the way it's supposed to come off, or they disrupt, or they halt successful communication. And what we want to do within an organization is create openings that break down communication barriers. And so some barriers include things like gender differences. Um, Men and women, different genders, communicate in different ways. Cultural barriers, so having an increased awareness and sensitivity of different cultures, understanding other cultures and how they communicate. Language, obviously, language, using jargon or technical language. I can't tell you the number of times I have been in a meeting and somebody uses some jargon or an acronym, and I have to say, what does that stand for again? Because otherwise I have no clue what they're talking about. All right, we also have civility and incivility and defensive and non-defensive communication. So civility is communication and behavior that is respectful. It prevents harm and damage and contributes to the well-being. Incivility is when people are disrespectful, they're rude, they're hurtful, and it really leads to a decline in satisfaction with supervisors, and it can really create this perception of unfair treatment in workers. I think we've all heard the term Minnesota nice. That is a good thing in communication, right? We want to try to frame things so that people aren't offended, so we don't have a breakdown in our flow of communication. So we want to communicate things in as civil of a manner as possible. Right, there's defensive and non-defensive communication. Um, Defensive would be very aggressive, passive, withdrawn messages. Non-defensive is more assertive, more direct, and more powerful messages. All right, in nonverbal communication, so yes, we communicate through spoken words, but there also are different types of nonverbal communication. So proxemics is really our use of space. How close do you stand to somebody? How far away do you stand from somebody? And this actually is a very cultural thing as well. You'll see that different cultures have different proxemics, and just people in general. I have some friends who are just like right up in your face when they're talking, and that is just they like to be close to you when they're talking, and I find myself stepping back and they're stepping towards me because they want to be close. um, Kinesthetics are a study of our body movement, our posture. So am I sitting up straight, am I slouching? What does that tell the communicator? Facial and eye behavior, things like rolling your eyes, that is telling somebody you're annoyed, or whatever, or maybe you don't agree, or whatever that might be. It can be, do I have a smile on my face? What do my facial features tell me? And there's a lot that our face can tell us. And then paralanguage is just variation on our speech. So it's our pitch, it's our loudness, it's our tempo, it's our tone, laughing, crying, and duration, right? And you can tell when somebody's mad and they raise their voice, that is paralanguage and they're mad. Or if they whisper, they might be telling a secret. All of that is paralanguage. All right, so it's important to have positive and healthy communication. A communicative disease is loneliness and social isolation that results from the absence of heartfelt communication in relationships. And so we're trying to balance this between head and heart. So we want to display positive emotional competence, maintain healthy internal conversations with ourselves and our own emotions so that we're a better communicator in our personal and our professional lives. We also have a variety of communications we can use for communication. Email. I email, I send announcements to you all the time. It's one of my preferred means of communication. We have voicemail. We have phone. We have instant messaging. We have fax machines. We have smartphones. We have text messaging. And all of these can lead to a variety of good and bad things. So all of this information technology that we have makes it easier to communicate, but it also can decrease personal interactions. We're seeing definitely a decrease in interpersonal skills. We're not seeing those nonverbal cues. One of my favorite memes says something like, the best way to misinterpret a message is to try to like put emotions into a text message. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but you'll have people who say things like, "Oh, they sent me a text and they seemed mad." Well, you can't hear their voice. You can't hear their emotions. An emoji doesn't tell us everything. So you really do kind of have a breakdown in communication when we use technology at times. And so we have to learn how to use it correctly. Um, it can lead to an increased potential for overload. We're constantly overloaded with messages. And honestly, we just miss that face to face communication. So when you are sending an email, make sure you are sending an email saying, "Hi, this is why I'm emailing you," and really try to provide some context in those emails. So that is our mini lecture for Chapter 8 on communication. Here's all the key words. You can see that in your PowerPoint. And have a good day. And like I said, to make this a two-way flow of communication, please email me or contact me if you have any questions. All right, have a great day.